case you hadn't realised. I run an organisation called Euclid, and for 11 years, from 1999 to 2009, we were the official contact point in the United Kingdom for the culture programme. I'm going to take a very practical and pragmatic approach to helping you through the application process. And I'm hoping that everybody has a pen and a piece of paper. I'm going to invite you to score yourself, and I'll explain that in a moment. In fact, I'll explain how. Oh, there we go. I'm going to present 39 questions, the 39 steps, in 7 areas. You are going to score yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, depending on where you feel you are in each of these 39 areas. And this is designed to give you a feeling as to how ready you are to submit that application that's going to be the most successful application possible. So we're going to go through 39 questions, you're going to score yourself, and at the end of it, we are going to get a sort of little survey as to how everybody has gone in this little practical test. The first question is, have you and your partners got your participant identification codes? No one's got one, score 1. You do, score 3. Everybody has, score 5. Okay. How long have you and your partner organisations been going? You've all been going for a year or less. Well, that doesn't score very well, score 1. You've all been going for at least 2 years, score 3. You've all been going for a long time, score 5. How would you describe your financial statement? Your accounts show the organisation has limited income and has had some financial issues. You're constantly in overdraft, you've got no money, you're being taken to court by the bailiffs, whatever else has gone wrong. That's a score of 1. Organisation modestly successful, break-even position, some assets, score 3. Your accounts are extremely healthy, score 5. What have you done in Europe, more broadly? No one's done anything much in any other European countries. Okay? You'd be surprised, people come to me. I work in the UK. We have a very different approach to Europe than many other European countries. So sometimes these questions are quite important. Question score 3, if your partners have been to at least one other European country for work-related reasons. Your holiday in Spain doesn't count. Okay? Score 5, if your partners are members of a European network and been to more than one European country for work-related reasons. Have you and your partners been involved in collaborative projects with one or more partners in other European countries? 1, none. 3, some have done some joint work with at least one other organisation. 5, you've all been part of an EU-funded project, maybe not the culture programme, maybe Grundtvig or Erasmus or Europe for Citizens or something else with 2 or more partners. Partners. Are all the required partners in place? Now, hopefully they are. Score 1 if none are. Okay, you're a disaster. 3, at least one is confirmed and there are ideas about the others. Score 5, they're all confirmed and you've got all the minimum, with more than the minimum required. Are the partners an interesting mix of organisations? They're all almost identical. Score 1. If you are 4 Baroque orchestras or 3 museums of ethnography, this is seen these days as dull, I'm afraid, the reality. Some are a bit different, a little bit of a mix. And 5, if they've all got something unique to contribute to this project. Question 3. If the partners are from European neighbouring countries outside the EU, have these countries signed the agreement to participate? And I'm sure everybody has got on top of this particular challenge, but obviously countries outside the EU member states can only participate in the culture programme or any other programme if they've signed the appropriate agreement. Score 1 if you have no idea whether these countries have signed. Score 3 if you've checked and some but not all. And score 5 if everything is all right. Okay? So that's all fine. How well do you think you know your partners? This is absolutely crucial. Projects fall apart because people don't know their partners well enough. They don't know their partners well enough, so they don't know enough about their background, they don't know them well enough to communicate with them, they don't know who are the right people to speak to if there are problems within projects, all of those sorts of issues. So score 1, if these partners are all totally new to you, you've never seen them before in your life, you've just found them on the internet, or sent them an email and somebody has said yes to them. 3, you know some but not all. And 5, you know them all really well. So if they're all really good friends and they've all come to your birthday party, then great. Are your partners in a good position? In other words, do you think they'll still be around at the end of the project? 1, you don't feel at all confident about their status and prospects, so you're really not quite sure who these partners are and what their status is and whether they've got any money in the bank or anything else. 3, you feel confident about some, but not necessarily all. And score 5 if you feel very confident about all. Okay? And finally, if you have any associate partners, is everyone clear about their role? In other words, they are not subcontractors. They are genuine partners, even if they are associate partners from countries outside the eligible countries. And they're clear about any financial contribution they might be making, which is probably unlikely, but possible, and any payment they will receive. Okay, so if money is being paid to associate partners, you need to be clear about how that is going to happen and why, and so on and so forth. Let's talk about the idea. Now, I have 12 questions about the idea. Now, obviously, the idea is crucial. How far has your idea progressed? Well, if it's still fairly vague, score 1. You've got an outline. You've got at least half a page of outline. Score 3. And you have a detailed outline of several pages, so your idea is quite well thought out. Score 5. Have the partners contributed to the development of the idea? It's no good if you have the greatest idea in the world and all you want to do is dragoon your partners into supporting your fantastic idea. These partners come from other countries. Things happen differently in other countries. Things work differently. Things might work better because of certain factors in other countries. So your idea will have to evolve in discussion and debate with the partners or the prospective partners from other countries. So if the partners haven't contributed, score 1. If they've contributed a bit, score 3. And if the project outline includes partner responses and reflects their own needs and contributions and so on, then score 5. Does your project in any way embrace or explore the notion of European common cultural heritage? It's not essential that your project explores common cultural heritage. But common cultural heritage is the one phrase that underpins the European commitment to culture in the treaties of the European Union. Okay? The treaties of the European Union are the documents that provide the legal basis on which the European Union can function. There is an article in the treaties on culture, and that one article on culture talks about Europe's common cultural heritage. What is it that brings people together across the borders of the different member states? Exploring what common cultural heritage might mean in the 21st century might be an interesting basis for a project. Does your project link to Europe 2020? Europe 2020 is the mission statement of the European Union. It is the document that governs the way the European Union overall sets its priorities and spends its money. And these priorities are reflected in all the funding programs of the European Union. And for the first time, they are reflected even more strongly within the culture sub-program. In the bigger picture, it does no harm to make sure that you are clear in stating the way in which your project is going to address criteria such as these: the challenges of unemployment, the need for more research and innovation across the European Union, the challenges of climate change, having more young people in education, and so on and so forth. How far does your idea embrace the new themes that are specifically reflected in the culture sub-program? So within the culture sub-program, they talk about, as we've just heard, new technologies, capacity building, internationalism, new business models, so on. To what degree does your project effectively reflect those themes? Hardly at all. You've considered them and made some progress. You're very confident that your project effectively addresses many of these. So again, score on that particular basis. In what way does your project address the key new priority of audience development that Egle has just outlined so interestingly in her presentation? Not at all. You consider this and made some progress, and you're confident that it will effectively address it. There's a really interesting dilemma about audience development, I think, in terms of the way in which it's framed. They haven't actually included, or they've left out, any implication about the relationship between audience development and income. So there's an implication here about what we mean by audience development. Are we simply talking about more people, in which case we can spend umpteen amounts of public funding subsidising the way in which people can access things for free, like free access to museums and so on? Or are we talking about new business models that are going to mean that there is a link between audience development and generating more income? How imaginative and innovative is your idea? Now, if we were weighting this exercise as to which are the most important of these 39 questions, I personally think this is one of the most important. You know, the European Commission has limited resources. Competition is hard. One of the things that's blindingly clear, for better or worse, is that they are financing fewer projects per year than they funded in the previous round. And one of the things they are certainly looking for is imagination and innovation in your project idea and what you are going to do that's going to be different and unique and challenging and effective and so on and so forth. So this is absolutely crucial. Your project has no unique features, it's all been done before, score 1. There are at least some aspects might be deemed innovative, score 3. It's genuinely innovative in its themes, approach, partners, outputs, and so on, score 5. Is your project interdisciplinary? This is another key word that's used within the criteria. Again, it's not essential, and your innovative project with 4 Baroque orchestras may well be a winner. But they are looking for dynamic and innovative projects. And it may be that helping to achieve your dynamism and innovation will be a mix of organisations and institutions, from traditional and contemporary arts and culture, from ones who are involved at the cutting edge with young people, from ones that are more traditional, and so on and so forth. To what degree is your project international? If you read the Europe 2020 agenda, there is a lot of talk about globalisation, the role of the EU in the world, a greater emphasis on the EU promoting itself, promoting its presence, building international relations, and so on and so forth. So the involvement of international partners, providing it is relevant, providing that involvement is going to help the uniqueness, innovation, and so on of the project, could be a very good thing. How do you identify the priority for the project? Okay, now everybody should have done this by now. There are 6 priorities, as I'm sure you know. We'll look at this again a bit later on. You've selected a number of potential possible priorities, score 3. If you've selected your main priority, which you're absolutely clear you're going to be focused on, maybe 1 or 2 others that you can refer to, great, then you're done. Have you and your partners identified the national, regional, and local priorities that your project will also address? This is a very interesting new addition to the programme. But what they are asking you to do is not just to demonstrate how your project addresses the priorities that have been set by the European Union, but the way your project addresses priorities within the member states of the project partner. This could be a national priority set by your ministry. It could be a regional priority set by your regional government. It could be a local priority set by your municipality. But what they're looking for is a way in which that they can say that these projects not only reflect the European priorities, which are obviously crucial, but these priorities also reflect priorities that have been set by the member states. Okay, number 12. Will the project lead to a legacy or impact? Another crucial. So they're absolutely concerned to make sure that any project they fund not only has an exciting impact, but that impact has the potential to live on beyond the end of the project. And if you can demonstrate that this project leaves behind something that is going to be of benefit to others, that others can pick up on and use in their own context and environments, great. It's about creating results that can be picked up on and that can then be replicated, used as examples of good practice, and so on and so forth. The European Union uses a wonderful word for this process. It's called valorization. Not the word commonly used in the English language, we keep telling them, but they still use it. Valorization is really crucial. It's a way in which you can take the results of the investment of European Union taxpayers' money and make the best use of that by replicating these examples of good practice. Your activities. A couple of practical things about your activities. Hopefully, you will have a staff end date. For goodness sake, make sure your start date is after the beginning of the eligible start date period and is sufficiently in advance of your project activities. How far have you progressed your schedule of project activities? Now, the project application requires you to complete a schedule, but actually you and your partners cannot agree on what this project is all about unless you've got a schedule, unless you know exactly what you are doing, what is happening when, which partner is responsible for each of the major activities, what the different responsibilities are going to be of the other partners during each stage of these activities, and so on and so forth. So, right, you've not yet started your schedule, you have prepared an outline schedule, you have a detailed schedule with key dates, the dates for the key project stages, notes what each partner is doing, and so on and so forth. So, got that, then you're fine. Is everyone clear about subcontracting? The European Commission guidance notes do go on a bit about subcontracting. There's a lot in the notes about subcontracting, and people tend to read this and have a panic attack that subcontracting is something awful that they're not really allowed to do. This is not the case. Subcontracting is perfectly acceptable, but the Commission has to put in lots of rules and regulations because subcontracting obviously sends the money outside the partners. So if it's going to be subcontracted, then you just have to make sure you're going to go through the appropriate rules and regulations for subcontracting of funds, which may include receiving quotes or tenders from a number of different suppliers in order to get the best value for money, and so on and so forth. So don't be put off. How clear and comprehensive is the communication plan? Your communication plan is how you are going to promote two things. The first thing is how you're going to promote what you are doing during the project. Okay, what you are doing during the project in order to make sure that people participate or come along as visitors or whatever it is you need people to do to be involved in the project. And the second part of the communication plan is how you are promoting the results. So in other words, how you are working on the valorization, disseminating the impact, the results, the examples of good practice, and so on and so forth. This needs to be very detailed. The Commission is determined to make sure that these projects are promoted well, that they are talked about positively, and so on. I mean, at the end of the day, let's remember that there are a lot of bad news stories about the European Union. This is an opportunity for the European Union to be associated with good news stories. So they are very keen to make sure that this is maximised. Budget's always an interesting one. From my point of view, it's important to try and remember that there is a budget for the project. This is one project. It is not 4 partner projects coming together under one banner. Now, I quite understand that in practical terms, when discussing things with partners, one of the things that partners will want to talk about are the finances. What is it that we are going to have to contribute? What will we be getting back? When do we receive the money you're telling us we're going to get? And so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, from the European Commission's perspective, it is one overarching budget that is there to deliver the overall outcomes. How detailed is your budget? Well, if you've only got a draft with a few general headings, then that's 1. If you've got a draft with a few detailed headings, then you're on 3. And if you've done your budget where you've got detailed headings which in some way match the headings that the Commission requires, then that's a 5. My advice is always don't start with the European Commission's budget form. Okay? Take a blank spreadsheet, and you and your partner simply itemise every single thing that is required to produce this joint project involving exhibitions, performances, festivals, whatever else it might be. You can then resort your budget by the European Commission headings to see how it will then have to be presented on the actual budget form required by the Commission. How clear are you as to where your share of the match funding will come from? Now, match funding is always a challenge, as they say. Match funding can come from a variety of sources, but it is then likely, inevitable, that the various partners will have to collectively contribute to the match funding. So it's important to be absolutely clear as early as possible as to where your share of the match funding will come from. Whatever the mix is, you just need to be clear about how that's going to work for you as the lead partner. Then also you need to be clear as to whether your partners are clear as to where their match funding is going to come from. And I put these two separate because it may be relatively easy for you to identify where your own match funding is going to come from. It may be a lot more challenging to actually pin down your co-organisers to confirm where their match funding is going to come from. Are the partners clear as to exactly where they're applying to? And again, I put this separately because you really need to pin down the partners. It's all very often saying we are going to make application. But at the end of the day, and it's even more clear in the new round of the Culture Programme, the lead partner is the organisation that signs the contract with the European Commission. The lead partner is ultimately responsible for everything that happens in the project, even if it happens through one of the co-organisers. However difficult you might feel it is going to be to clarify with your co-organisers in the application process these issues about match funding, about what they're going to have to do before they're paid their share of the finances, about their arrangements, trust me, asking those difficult questions will be much easier than the nightmare you will face if it all goes horribly wrong later on in the project and the European Commission descends upon you, asking you questions about what went wrong with some other co-organiser. That is a nightmare that you want to avoid like the plague. Partners clear about any staff salary contributions to match funding. It is possible, if you've got somebody on your staff who is going to work on the project for half their time, then half their salary can be included as both income and expenditure. That's absolutely fine. Be absolutely clear that they are using their real salaries, plus any government-approved contributions for pensions or whatever else it might be, but they have to be real salaries. How are the finances to be managed between you and your partners? Now, there is no rule, but from the European Commission. The European Commission does not say you have to do it this way. It is entirely up to you and your partners, as to how you do this. It would not be impossible for the lead partner to pay everything. Every invoice generated by whoever it was, whether it was the co-organiser or somebody else, could all come to the lead partner. And the lead partner could pay everything. That is a possible one end of the spectrum. At the other end of the spectrum is where the money is simply circulated to all the co-organisers, and the co-organisers take responsibility for paying all the bills of the activities in their area. And there may be points along that spectrum which are going to work for different projects. That's absolutely fine. But you need to be absolutely clear as to what arrangement you are agreeing with your co-organisers and what they expect to get and where. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to make decisions. But whatever decisions you make, you must make sure that it's clearly understood between you and your co-organisers that this is the way it is going to work. If you apply for €750,000, have the extra audit report being organised. I'm going to skip that one probably because I'm not sure anybody is, but don't forget there is that extra report that has to be done. No, in process, yes. If it's not relevant, give yourself a 3. Okay, almost at the end, you'll be pleased to know. Other things. Have the lead and co-organisers done their activity reports? Don't forget that everybody has to submit this activity report covering a summary of the last 2 years' activities of the organisation. There are two reasons for producing this activity report. One is to demonstrate that you are a credible organisation with appropriate experience, and you will be a useful partner to ensure that the overall outcomes of this project are going to be delivered. And the second reason is that you have specific and credible experience in the area which is the focus of the application. Have the statutes and CVs from the co-organisers. Okay, I mean, the introduction of the PICs, Participant Identification Code, has had a good impact and a bad impact. The good impact is that they're fairly easy to do. People sort of do them. The bad impact is people think when they've done it, that's all they need to do, and they forget about the other things that they need to contribute. Have your co-organisers done and set their mandates? There is a huge debate at the moment in the UK about the amount that is put on the mandate and what that represents. What you have to say on the mandate is you have to identify the amount that you are contributing to the project. Okay? Now, there is confusion, it seems to me, as to exactly what that amount is. So, who knows any questions about this? So, my question about the issue about the mandate is, if you are at all confused, keep in contact with Matea and the Credit Bureau desk, because they will be able to give you the final information once it is clarified. Okay. Last slide. Has the cooperation agreement been prepared and signed? The cooperation agreement is now mandatory. The partners have to agree and sign a cooperation agreement. Essentially, it's a legal document, but it contains basically what's in the application form about the project and what the partners have agreed to do, particularly in terms of what they're going to do for the project, their payments or stages of payment, all those sorts of things that people might have disagreements or discussions about. The Commission wants to see that enshrined in an agreement that's signed by the various co-organisers of the project. So that's what the cooperation agreement is about, and there is now guidance available about that. Okay, there'll be a slight pause, because that's the last slide, and I'm going to ask you to add up your scores. So there will be a 1 minute pause while people can add up their scores. The maximum score is 40 by 5 is 200, it's 195. Okay, who got over 50? Over 50? Anybody get over 50? Hopefully most of over 50. For that, right. Who got over 100? Over 100? Very good. Okay. Who got over 120? Over 120? Right, so there's been a few thinning out going on there. Who got over 140? You did get, you made a mistake, you got over that one. Sorry, who got over 140? How many got over 140? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very good. Okay, that's great. Terrific. Well done. Where everyone is concerned, you can get all the information and more from the Credit Bureau desk here in Slovenia or whichever country you're in. But if you have any general questions, then do feel free to send me an email. I'm very happy to reply to them. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.